Drink from the toilet. Mom. The words exploded in the backyard like cruel laughter wrapped in beer foam. It was 105 degrees in El Paso, Texas, the kind of heat that dries your throat until swallowing hurts. Maria Hernandez stood frozen, her hands deep in a plastic wash tub, scrubbing motor oil from her son's shirt. Sweat ran down her spine. Her lips were cracked, her vision blurred from thirst. She hadn't asked for money. She hadn't asked for rest. She had asked for one glass of water. Her son laughed. His friends laughed louder. And somewhere in the dust and darkness of that neighborhood, a knock was already on its way to the door. By morning, the man who mocked his own mother would never see again. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if you're carrying pain like Maria was, type pray in the comments. You're not alone here at Heaven Walks With Us. The sun over El Paso didn't shine. It pressed down. Maria Hernandez was 72 years old, and every year felt heavier than the last. She lived in a narrow room behind her son's house, a converted storage space with a small bed, a wobbling chair, and a single window that barely opened. No air conditioning, just a rattling fan that had stopped working months ago. By noon, the concrete walls trapped heat like an oven. Maria had started washing clothes at 2 in the afternoon, after cleaning the kitchen, sweeping the garage, and preparing lunch that she never ate. Jason, her son, had tossed his work shirt into the basket without looking at her. Dark oil stains spread across the fabric like bruises. "For that you're still useful," he had muttered earlier, already heading out to his auto shop. Maria didn't answer. She rarely did. Her hands were thin now, veins raised like blue strings beneath wrinkled skin. They trembled slightly as she scrubbed. The water in the tub was warm and cloudy with soap and grease. She wiped her forehead with her sleeve and swallowed. Her throat burned. Maria hadn't drunk anything since breakfast, just a small cup of coffee hours earlier. She told herself she would ask later. She always waited. She always tried not to be a burden. Jason was 35. He owned a small auto repair shop called Torque King's Auto. Business was good enough that he drove a new pickup truck and spent weekends drinking with friends in the front yard. Maria remembered when he used to come home with scraped knees, crying for her to kiss them better. Now he barely spoke to her unless something needed to be done. From the front of the house came the sound of laughter. Bottles clinked. Music played too loud. Maria glanced toward the door, then back at the tub. Her lips were dry. Her tongue felt thick. She tried once. "Jason," she called softly, her voice hoarse. "Son, could you bring me a glass of water, please?" No answer. She waited. The fanless air clung to her skin. Her heart beat faster than it should have. "Jason," she tried again, louder this time. "Please, I'm very thirsty." The laughter paused. Then it came back stronger. Maria closed her eyes. She had worked 30 years cleaning rooms, washing dishes, selling food from street corners, everything she could, so Jason could have a better life. She had never imagined that in her old age, asking for water would feel like begging for mercy. She didn't know it yet, but heaven had already heard her, and justice was already walking closer than she could imagine. Maria Hernandez had never planned to grow old in this way. When she was 26, she stood in a small church in Juarez, holding the hand of a man named Carlos, Jason's father. He was gentle, quiet, and strong in a way that didn't need to announce itself. They crossed into the United States together with nothing but 2 suitcases and a promise that their son would have a life better than theirs. That promise became Maria's religion. When Carlos died in a construction accident just 5 years later, Maria didn't have time to grieve. Jason was still small. Rent was still due. Hunger did not wait for morning. So Maria worked. She cleaned motel rooms along Interstate 10, scrubbing toilets and changing sheets stained with the lives of strangers. At night, she soaked her swollen feet in cold water and whispered prayers over her sleeping boy. When motel work slowed, she cooked burritos, tamales, anything she could sell from a small cart on street corners. Rain burned her skin in winter. Sun blistered her neck in summer. For 30 years, Maria woke before dawn and slept after midnight. She learned to ignore pain because pain did not pay bills. Jason grew. He went to school in clean clothes. He never missed a meal. When teachers praised him, Maria smiled quietly from the back of the room. When he graduated, she cried into her apron, overwhelmed by gratitude. She thought the hardest part was over. She was wrong. As Jason became a man, something changed. Not overnight. Slowly, pride crept in. Gratitude slipped out. Success hardened him. The boy who once clung to her leg became a man who barely noticed her presence. When Jason married Brianna, Maria tried to be helpful. She cooked. She cleaned. She stayed invisible, but invisible things are easy to step on. The spare bedroom became storage, then the garage. Finally, the small room out back, just temporary, they said. Temporary became permanent. Maria never complained. She told herself, "This is what mothers do." She told herself, "At least I'm close to my son," but closeness without love is just another kind of loneliness. As the years passed, Maria's body slowed, but expectations did not. Brianna criticized how she cooked. Jason complained when clothes weren't clean enough. Gratitude was replaced with entitlement. And yet, every night, Maria prayed for Jason, not for money, not for success, but for his heart. She asked God to soften him, to protect him from becoming someone cruel, to remind him where he came from. What Maria did not know was that heaven had been listening all along. And sometimes, when prayers go unanswered for a long time, it is not because God is silent, it is because he is waiting for the moment when justice will speak loud enough to be heard. By late afternoon, the heat became unbearable. The sun had shifted, but it offered no mercy. The air stood still, thick and heavy, as if the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. Maria's dress clung to her back, damp with sweat. Her hands ached from scrubbing, but she kept going, dipping the shirt back into the cloudy water, rubbing at the oil stains until her fingers burned. Her mouth was dry, painfully dry. Each swallow felt like sand scraping down her throat. Her tongue stuck to the roof of her mouth. She tried to ignore it. She always did. But this time, her vision wavered slightly, and she had to steady herself against the edge of the plastic tub. Just a glass of water, she told herself. That's all. From the front yard came the familiar sounds, laughter, loud voices, the hiss of beer cans opening. Jason's friends were over again. Maria could hear dominoes slamming against a plastic table, followed by cheers and mocking groans. Someone turned the music up? She hesitated. Asking for anything when Jason had been drinking never ended well. Still, the thirst pressed harder. She wiped her hands on her dress and took a step toward the door. "Jason," she called, her voice weak but polite. "Son, could you please bring me a glass of water?" Nothing. The laughter rolled on, uncaring. Maria waited, her chest rising and falling too quickly now. She leaned against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. The concrete was warm beneath her palm. "Jason," she tried again, louder this time. "Please, I haven't had any water since morning." The voices outside quieted just enough for her to hear someone repeat her words in a mocking tone. "Oh, she's thirsty," a man laughed. Another voice chimed in. "Must be rough." Then Jason's voice cut through them all, slurred, amused, careless. "Did you hear that?" he said. "She wants water." The men burst out laughing. Maria's stomach tightened. She took a few slow steps toward the doorway that led to the front of the house. Her heart pounded, not from exertion, but from a familiar dread. She stopped just short of stepping outside, not wanting to be seen, not wanting to humiliate herself. "Jason," she said one last time, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, I'm very thirsty." There was a pause. Footsteps approached. Jason appeared in the doorway, a beer can in his hand, his face flushed from alcohol and heat. Behind him, 3 men leaned forward, eager, entertained. Brianna stood a few feet back, arms crossed, lips curled in a faint smile. Jason looked at his mother like she was an inconvenience. "Water?" he repeated slowly. Maria nodded. That was when his mouth twisted into a grin that would change everything. Jason's grin widened as if he had just been handed a microphone. "Water?" he said again, dragging the word out. He turned his head slightly toward his friends, enjoying the attention. "You guys hear that? My mom wants water." The men laughed, louder this time. One of them slapped the table. Another took a long drink from his beer, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Maria stood still. Her heart thudded so hard she could feel it in her ears. "Yes," she said quietly. "Just a glass. Please." Jason took a step closer. The smell of alcohol and grease clung to him. He looked down at her, not with anger, but with amusement. That was worse. "Well," he said, glancing around the yard, "there's water everywhere." The laughter slowed. Curious now, Jason pointed toward the bathroom window. "There's a toilet inside. That's water, right?" For a split second, Maria didn't understand. Then the words landed. "Drink from the toilet. Mom?" The silence lasted less than a heartbeat. Then the yard exploded. One man doubled over, coughing with laughter. Another whistled. Someone shouted, "Damn! Jason!" like it was a punchline worth applauding. Maria felt something inside her collapse. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her chest tightened. Her eyes burned. She searched her son's face, hoping desperately that he would stop laughing, that he would say he was joking. He didn't. Instead, Jason shrugged and pointed again, this time toward the side of the house. "Or better yet," he said, "use the hose." He gestured toward a green rubber hose coiled against the wall, streaked with dirt and oil. The same hose they used to rinse tires, wash grease off the driveway, spray mud from the undercarriage of cars. "There," he said. "Plenty of water. Fresh." Maria followed his finger. The hose. Her stomach twisted. She felt Brianna's eyes on her. When Maria looked back, her daughter-in-law was smiling, not kindly, not awkwardly, but with something sharp and satisfied. "Don't be dramatic," Brianna added. "It's just water." The men laughed again, relieved that the moment hadn't turned uncomfortable. Maria's hands shook at her sides. She wanted to scream. She wanted to turn and walk away. She wanted to disappear, but her throat burned. The thirst was no longer just discomfort. It was pain, a deep, gnawing ache that made her dizzy. Her legs felt weak. She knew if she pushed back, if she argued, it would only get worse. Jason leaned closer, his voice dropping. "I pay for this house," he said. "You eat what I buy. You live here because I let you. So if I tell you to drink from the hose, you drink from the hose." Maria's vision blurred with tears. She nodded, not because she agreed, but because she had no strength left to fight. Without another word, she turned away from the laughter, from the music, from her son's mocking eyes. Each step toward the hose felt heavier than the last. She bent down, her knees trembling, and picked up the nozzle. The rubber was warm in her hands. As she twisted the valve, the first burst of water splashed onto the concrete, brown, murky, carrying the smell of dirt and metal. Maria closed her eyes, and she drank. The water burned going down. It wasn't cold or refreshing. It tasted like rust and plastic, like something that had been sitting too long under the sun. Maria swallowed once, then again, forcing herself to drink because the thirst inside her was louder than the shame. Her hands trembled as she held the nozzle. The men's laughter faded into a distant echo. All she could hear was the rush of water and the pounding of her own heart. When she finally lowered the hose, nausea rolled through her stomach. She dropped it onto the concrete and stumbled back toward the washtub, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Tears slid silently down her cheeks, mixing with sweat. She didn't look toward the front yard again. She didn't need to. By sunset, the pain had begun. At first, it was a dull ache in her belly, easy to ignore, familiar in a body that had learned to endure discomfort. But as the sky darkened, the ache sharpened. It spread upward, twisting her insides until she had to grip the edge of the bed in her small room to steady herself. Her stomach cramped violently. Maria lay down, curling onto her side. The thin mattress offered no comfort. She pressed a hand against her abdomen, breathing through the waves of pain. Her mouth felt dry again, but she couldn't imagine drinking anything more. From inside the house came the muffled sounds of dinner, plates clinking, the television playing, Jason's laughter, relaxed now, careless. No one called her, no one checked on her. When the pain became unbearable, Maria staggered to the bathroom. She barely made it in time. She knelt on the cold tile floor and vomited until her body shook. Bitter liquid burned her throat. When there was nothing left, her stomach still heaved, forcing up dry retches that left her gasping for air. She rested her forehead against the toilet seat, dizzy and weak. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time blurred. Finally, she pushed herself up and returned to her room, moving slowly, one hand against the wall. Her legs felt unsteady beneath her. She collapsed onto the bed, shaking. That was when the fever came. Heat pulsed through her body, different from the sun's heat earlier. This was internal, relentless. Her skin burned. Sweat soaked the sheets beneath her. Her thoughts drifted in and out, slipping between memories and reality. She saw Jason as a boy again, running toward her with scraped knees. She heard herself singing softly while washing dishes late at night. She remembered the weight of aluminum pots filled with food she carried for miles, all of it for this. Tears streamed down her temples and into her hair. "Lord," she whispered hoarsely, staring at the cracked ceiling, "I don't understand." Her voice broke. "I gave him everything. I gave him my youth, my strength, my health. I never asked for anything back." She swallowed painfully. "Why am I treated like I'm nothing?" There was no answer, only the hum of the house settling, the distant sound of laughter fading as people went to bed, the steady ticking of a clock she could no longer see. Maria turned her face toward the wall. "Did I fail as a mother?" she asked the empty room. "Is this my punishment?" Her eyelids felt heavy. Exhaustion pulled at her, but the pain kept her awake. Each breath felt shallow. Each movement sent another wave of nausea through her body. She curled into herself, arms wrapped around her stomach, and whispered one last prayer before sleep finally overtook her. "Please," she murmured, "if you see me, don't forget me." Outside, the night grew quiet, and somewhere beyond the walls of that house, unseen footsteps were already moving closer. Morning came without mercy. Maria woke to a pounding headache and a heat that no longer came from the sun. Her skin felt tight, feverish. When she tried to sit up, the room tilted, and she had to grab the edge of the bed to keep from falling back. Her throat burned again. She reached for the small cup on the floor beside her bed. Empty. For a moment, she lay still, staring at the wall, trying to gather strength. She knew what would happen if breakfast wasn't ready. She had learned the rhythm of the house well enough to predict the anger before it arrived. Sure enough, the shouting came. "Where's my food?" Jason's voice slammed into her door like a fist. Maria opened her mouth to answer, but only a weak sound escaped. Her chest tightened as she tried again. "I'm sick," she managed to whisper. "I can't get up." The door flew open. Jason stood there already dressed for work, keys in his hand, impatience written across his face. He looked at her the way someone looks at a broken appliance, annoyed, inconvenienced. "What's wrong with you now?" he snapped. Maria struggled to sit up. "The water, last night. I think it made me sick. I have a fever." Jason rolled his eyes. "You're always sick," he said. "Always some drama." He stepped into the room, looked around, and scoffed. "I work all day, and you lie here doing nothing?" "I really can't," Maria whispered. Her vision blurred again. "Please." Jason slammed his palm against the wall. "I'm tired of this," he shouted. "You eat, you sleep, you waste space." The words landed one after another, sharp and deliberate. From the hallway, Brianna's voice joined in, smooth and cold. "Honestly, Jason," she said, "she's becoming a problem." Maria's heart sank. Jason turned toward the hallway. "I know." Brianna stepped into the doorway, arms crossed, looking down at Maria with open disdain. "Maybe it's time we stop pretending," she said. "She's old. She's sick. She's not useful anymore." Maria's fingers curled into the blanket. Jason nodded slowly, as if the idea had already been growing in his mind. "There are state nursing homes," Brianna continued. "They take care of people like her. That way we don't have to—" "People like her?" Maria felt the room close in. Jason exhaled through his nose. "Yeah," he said. "That makes sense." Her chest tightened painfully. "I'll call around," Brianna added. "Once this month is over, we can move her out." Maria wanted to speak, wanted to beg, wanted to remind them that she was still alive, still their mother, still human, but the words wouldn't come. She lay there, frozen, listening as they discussed her future as if she were furniture that had outlived its purpose. When Jason finally left for work, slamming the door behind him, the house fell quiet again. Maria stared at the ceiling, tears sliding silently into her hair. 30 years of sacrifice, 30 years of love. And this was how it ended, not with death, but with disposal. She closed her eyes and whispered, her voice barely audible. "Lord, if this is all that's left for me, why keep me here?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, but heaven was already preparing a reply, and it would arrive sooner than anyone expected. Night fell slowly, thick and heavy. The house grew quiet, but Maria did not sleep. Her fever ebbed and surged in waves, leaving her weak and restless. She lay on her side, staring at the shadowed wall, listening to the familiar sounds of the place she had once called home. The refrigerator hummed. Pipes creaked. Somewhere, a dog barked and then went silent. She thought of the nursing home Brianna had mentioned, a place she had seen only on television, rows of beds, strangers' faces, the smell of disinfectant and loneliness. A place where time stretched endlessly and names were forgotten. Is this how it ends? She wondered. Her eyes burned, but no more tears came. Then, just before midnight, a sound cut through the silence. Knock, knock, knock. Soft, hesitant, almost apologetic. Maria's heart skipped. From the front of the house, she heard Jason stir. A door creaked open. Heavy footsteps crossed the living room. "What do you want?" Jason barked. A man's voice answered, low, calm, tired. "Sorry to bother you. Sir, could I trouble you for a glass of water?" Maria held her breath. There was a pause, then a sharp laugh. "You've got the wrong house," Jason snapped. I don't give handouts. I'm not asking for money, the man replied gently. Just water. I've been walking all day. Jason scoffed. Try somewhere else. Please, the voice said. I'm very thirsty. The word hit Maria like a blow. Thirsty. She squeezed her eyes shut. Jason's patience snapped. Get lost, he shouted. I said no. The door slammed. The sound echoed through the house, final and cruel. Maria lay frozen, her chest tight. Through the thin walls, she heard footsteps retreating, slow, uneven, as if the person outside had little strength left. Each step seemed to drag across the concrete. Something inside her stirred, a familiar ache, not hunger, not thirst, recognition. She thought of the hose, the laughter, the words thrown at her like stones. Drink from the toilet, Mom. Her hands trembled as she pushed herself upright. Her head swam, but she sat anyway, listening to the footsteps fade into the night. He's just like me, she realized. Turned away, unseen. A voice inside her, quiet but firm, rose above the fever and the fear. You know this pain. Maria swung her legs off the bed. The floor felt cold beneath her bare feet. She stood slowly, bracing herself against the wall until the dizziness passed. She did not go toward the front door. Instead, she moved to the small back door of her room, the one no one used. Her hand hovered over the knob. For a moment, she hesitated. Fear whispered that Jason would be angry, that Brianna would humiliate her again, that she was too weak, too sick, too old. Then she remembered something she had learned long ago. When the world refuses mercy, someone still has to choose it. Maria turned the knob and opened the door. Cool night air rushed in, and in the shadows beyond the yard, a figure waited. The man stood just beyond the edge of the porch light. At first, Maria could only make out his outline, thin shoulders, a bowed head, the curve of exhaustion pressed into his posture. His clothes were worn and dusty, his sandals scuffed and frayed. He looked like someone who had been walking for a very long time with nowhere to stop. I'm sorry, Maria said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I heard what happened. The man lifted his head. His face was streaked with dirt from the road, his beard uneven, his hair falling loose around his shoulders. But it was his eyes that made Maria catch her breath, deep, dark, and strangely gentle. There was no judgment in them, no expectation, only a quiet patience, as if he had already accepted whatever answer she might give. I didn't mean to cause trouble, he said. I can go. No, Maria replied quickly, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. Please, come in. She opened the door wider and stepped aside. The man hesitated. You don't have to. I want to, she said. You look like you need water. He nodded once, grateful but cautious, and followed her inside. Maria led him into her small room. The light bulb overhead flickered as she switched it on, casting soft shadows against the cracked walls. She pulled out the old wooden chair and motioned for him to sit. Please, she said again. The man lowered himself slowly, as if every movement cost him something. Maria turned away and made her way to the kitchen, moving carefully so she wouldn't be heard. She filled a glass with filtered water and paused for a moment, staring at it, clear, cool, clean. She swallowed and added a few tortillas she had hidden away, along with a small piece of cheese wrapped in paper. It wasn't much, but it was what she had. When she returned, the man took the glass with both hands. He closed his eyes as he drank, slowly, deliberately, as though each sip mattered. When he finished, he exhaled softly. Thank you, he said. God bless you. Maria sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. Her legs trembled, and she had to grip the blanket to steady herself. Where are you coming from? She asked. Far away, he replied. I walk from place to place." "Do you have family?" she asked. The man smiled faintly. "I have many brothers and sisters," he said, "but most of them don't recognize me." Something in his voice tightened her chest. "And you?" he asked gently. "Why are you so tired?" Maria blinked, surprised. She hadn't realized tears were slipping down her cheeks. "I don't know," she said weakly. "Yes, you do," he said kindly. "And it's not just your body." The words unlocked something inside her. She told him everything. She spoke of years spent working without rest, of love poured out without return, of the afternoon heat and the laughter, of the words that broke her spirit more than hunger ever could. She looked down at her hands as she whispered, "Yesterday, my son told me to drink water from the toilet." The man's fingers curled tightly around the empty glass. "And I did," Maria said, "because I was so thirsty." Silence filled the room. The air felt heavy, charged. The man lifted his head, and for the first time, Maria saw tears in his eyes. The man said nothing at first. He lowered his gaze to the table, his hands resting around the empty glass as if it were fragile. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until Maria wondered if she had said too much. She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand, embarrassed by her tears. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I shouldn't complain. Other people have it worse." He looked up then. "Why do you think that?" he asked quietly. Maria hesitated. "Because I'm still alive," she said. "Because I have a roof. Because I should be grateful." The man leaned forward slightly. "Gratitude does not require humiliation," he said, "and suffering is not a competition." His words landed gently, but they struck something deep. Maria's breath hitched. She pressed her lips together, trying to hold herself together. "I just don't understand," she said. "I gave my whole life to my son. Everything I had. I thought love would be enough." The man nodded slowly. "Love is enough," he said. "But love does not always change people the way we expect." She laughed softly, bitterly. "Then what was the point?" she asked. "All those years, all that work, for this?" "For planting," he replied. She frowned. "Planting what?" "Seeds," he said, "that take a long time to grow." Maria shook her head. "My son is cruel," she said. "He wasn't always. He used to be kind. Somewhere along the way, he forgot who he was. Or maybe I failed him." The man's expression tightened. "You did not fail," he said firmly. "How can you be so sure?" Maria asked. "Because cruelty is not born from love," he said. "It is born from blindness." She swallowed. "He said he pays for everything," she whispered. "That I owe him. That I should do what he says." The man closed his eyes for a moment, as if steadying himself. When he opened them, there was something new in his gaze. Pain, yes, but also resolve. "No one who gives life owes their dignity to those they raised," he said. "A parent's sacrifice is not a debt to be collected. It is a gift." Maria's shoulders began to shake. "I drank from the hose," she said again, her voice cracking. "I drank because I was thirsty. And because I didn't want to make things worse." The man's jaw clenched. "And now?" he asked softly. "What do you feel?" She searched for the right word. "Empty," she said. "Ashamed. Small. Like I don't matter anymore." He leaned closer, his voice lowering. "You matter," he said. "You have always mattered." Tears spilled freely now. Maria covered her face with her hands, the years of restraint finally breaking. She sobbed, not loudly, but deeply, the kind of crying that comes from carrying too much for too long. The man waited. He did not interrupt. He did not rush her. When she finally looked up, her eyes red and swollen, he spoke again. "Do you know why you recognized me tonight?" he asked. Maria shook her head. "Because you know what it feels like to be turned away when you are desperate," he said, "and because you chose mercy anyway." She stared at him, confused. "I just gave you water," she said. He smiled sadly. "Sometimes," he replied. "That is everything." The room felt different now, still, expectant. Maria sensed that the conversation had reached a place it could not turn back from, and somewhere deep within her, she knew the next words he spoke would change everything. The man stood slowly. The small room seemed to tighten around them as he rose, as if the air itself had grown aware. The flickering bulb above their heads steadied, glowing a little brighter, not harsh, not blinding, just present. Maria felt her breath catch. She didn't know why her heart was suddenly racing. "Maria," the man said, speaking her name with a familiarity that made her shiver. "Yes?" she whispered. He took a step closer. The pain in his eyes was still there, but beneath it was something deeper, ancient, steady, unshaken. When he spoke again, his voice was no longer tired. "Do you know why I came tonight?" Maria shook her head. I don't—" "Because I heard you," he said. Her brow furrowed. "You heard me?" "I heard your prayer," he replied. "Every one of them." The room felt impossibly quiet. "I heard you when you whispered over your son as a child," he continued. "I heard you when you worked until your hands bled. I heard you when you asked why love wasn't enough. And I heard you last night when you asked if you had failed." Maria's hands flew to her mouth. "That's not possible," she breathed. "I didn't tell anyone those things." He met her gaze, unwavering. "You didn't have to." Her legs trembled. She sat back down hard on the bed, her heart pounding so loudly she thought it might burst from her chest. Who are you?" she asked. The man knelt in front of her. The moment he did, something inside her broke open. Tears spilled freely again, not from pain this time, but from awe mixed with fear. No one had knelt before her in years. No one had lowered themselves to her level. He took her weathered hands gently into his own. "I am Jesus," he said. The name fell into the room like thunder wrapped in silk. Maria gasped. No, that can't be," she whispered. I'm nobody." He shook his head. "You are a daughter of God," he said firmly, "and you have never been invisible." The air felt warm now, alive. A faint scent filled the room, something like incense, like rain after a long drought. "But my son," Maria sobbed. "He hates me." "He is blind," Jesus said. "Not in his eyes, not yet, but in his heart." She shook her head desperately. "He's cruel. He humiliated me. He told me to drink from the toilet." Jesus' jaw tightened. "The scriptures speak of this," he said quietly. "Of those who mock the ones who gave them life. Of eyes that look with contempt instead of gratitude." His voice grew heavier, not loud, but weighty. "Your son took your dignity and made sport of it," he continued. "He turned sacrifice into weakness, and because of that, he will learn what it means to walk in darkness." Maria's eyes widened. What are you saying?" "Justice," Jesus replied. "Not revenge. Justice." Fear gripped her chest. "But he's my son," she pleaded. "I carried him. I fed him. I prayed for him every night." Jesus' eyes softened, and tears gathered there. "I know," he said. His voice broke slightly. "I had a mother, too." The words hit her like a wave. "But some hearts cannot be healed by comfort alone," he continued. "Some must be stopped before they destroy themselves completely." Maria's hands shook in his. "What will happen to him?" she whispered. Jesus rose slowly to his feet. "He will lose what he used to see," he said, "so that one day he may finally see what truly matters." Maria wept openly now. Will he be lost forever? No, Jesus said. Pain does not have to be the end, but it will be the beginning. He stepped back toward the door. Rest now, Maria, he said gently. When morning comes, your fever will be gone, and your chains will be broken. She reached out instinctively. Wait. But the room was already growing still again. When she blinked, the space before her was empty. Only the glass on the table remained, and the certainty in her heart that heaven had spoken. The house fell into an uneasy silence. Maria lay back on her bed, heart still racing, unsure whether what had just happened was real or the fever finally breaking. The air felt lighter. Her skin no longer burned. The pain in her stomach had faded to a dull echo. For the first time all day, she slept. In the front bedroom, Jason turned restlessly beside Brianna. His head throbbed from too much beer and too little patience. He muttered something under his breath, rolled onto his back, and finally drifted off. Then it happened. A sharp gasp tore through the darkness. Jason bolted upright, his heart slamming against his ribs. The room was pitch black. He reached instinctively for the lamp on the nightstand and flicked it on. Nothing changed. "Brianna," he whispered, panic creeping into his voice. "Brianna, wake up." She groaned and turned over. "What is it now?" "I can't see," he said. "Why is it so dark?" Brianna sighed and slapped the lamp again. "The light's on," she muttered. Jason's breath quickened. He waved a hand in front of his face. Nothing. He squeezed his eyes shut, then forced them open wide. Still nothing. "Turn on the ceiling light," he snapped. Brianna sat up, annoyed now, and flipped the switch. The room filled with light, but Jason remained trapped in darkness. "I can't see," he shouted. "Brianna, I can't see anything." Panic exploded inside him. He scrambled out of bed, knocking into the dresser. His shoulders slammed against the wall. "Jason, stop," Brianna said, suddenly alarmed. She grabbed her phone and shined the flashlight directly into his eyes. They were open. They didn't react. Her blood ran cold. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Jason." He clutched at her arm, his voice breaking. "Help me, please. I don't know what's happening." The commotion carried down the hall. Maria woke with a start. She sat up and froze. Her body felt normal. No dizziness, no fever, no pain. She swung her legs off the bed and stood without effort. Shock washed over her. She pressed a hand to her forehead. Cool, clear. Then she heard Jason screaming. Maria rushed toward the front of the house. She reached the bedroom doorway just as Brianna was dialing emergency services, her hands shaking. "Stay with me," Brianna said into the phone. "My husband woke up blind." "Yes, blind." Jason heard his mother's voice and turned toward it instantly. "Mom!" he cried, reaching out into the air. "Mom, is that you?" She stepped closer, her heart breaking at the sound of fear in his voice. "I'm here," she said softly. He found her arm and clung to it like a child. "I can't see. I swear I can't see." Maria closed her eyes. The words from earlier echoed in her mind. He will learn what it means to walk in darkness. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Paramedics arrived quickly, their movements brisk and professional. They asked questions. They shined lights. They spoke in low voices that did nothing to calm Jason's terror. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, he called out again. "Mom," he pleaded, "don't leave me." Maria followed them out into the night, her step steady, her heart heavy. Above them, the sky remained dark and silent, and somewhere between judgment and mercy, the consequence had begun. The emergency room smelled of antiseptic and urgency. Jason lay on the hospital bed, his hands gripping the thin blanket, as if it were the only solid thing left in his world. Voices moved around him, nurses, technicians, questions fired and answered, but none of it made sense to him. Darkness pressed in from every direction, heavy and complete. "Jason," a calm voice said, "I'm Dr. Reynolds. We're going to take care of you." Jason nodded, though he couldn't see the man. "I woke up like this," he said, his voice cracking. "I swear. I went to sleep fine." Lights flashed in his eyes. Fingers lifted his eyelids. Machines hummed. In the waiting area, Maria sat rigid in a plastic chair, hands folded tightly in her lap. Brianna paced back and forth, phone pressed to her ear, whispering urgently to someone on the other end. "This can't be happening," Brianna muttered. "He was fine yesterday." Hours passed. Finally, Dr. Reynolds stepped into the waiting area, his expression serious but controlled. "Family of Jason Hernandez?" he asked. Maria stood slowly. "I'm his mother." The doctor nodded. "Please come with me." They walked down a quiet hallway to a small consultation room. Dr. Reynolds closed the door gently before speaking. "Your son has suffered a bilateral retinal detachment," he said. Both eyes. Brianna frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means the retinas in both of his eyes have detached completely," the doctor replied. "The damage is severe." "Can you fix it?" Brianna asked quickly. "Surgery? Something?" The doctor hesitated. "I'm afraid this is not a typical case," he said. "The extent of the detachment is unusual. In my 40 years of practice, I've never seen it happen like this, not spontaneously, not overnight." Maria felt her knees weaken. "So? He'll be blind?" Brianna asked. Dr. Reynolds nodded slowly. "Yes, permanently." The word landed like a final blow. Brianna sank into a chair, her face pale. "This ruins everything," she whispered. Maria closed her eyes. Darkness, she thought. Just as he said. They were allowed to see Jason. He sat upright on the bed now, bandages covering his eyes, his hands clenched at his sides. When he heard footsteps, his head turned sharply. "Mom," he called. Maria moved to his side. "I'm here." His voice dropped to a whisper. "What did the doctor say?" She swallowed. "They're still running tests," she replied carefully. Jason's breathing grew uneven. "I can't live like this," he said. "I need my eyes, my shop, my life." Brianna stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression distant. "I need air," she said abruptly, already turning away. Over the next days, reality set in quickly. Jason's auto shop closed within the week. Customers went elsewhere. Bills piled up. Friends stopped calling. Brianna grew colder, more impatient, already talking about options and what this means for her. Maria watched it all quietly. She did not gloat. She did not celebrate. She prayed. And with each passing day, it became clear that the darkness Jason had been given was not only physical, it was stripping away everything he had built on pride, everything but his soul. The fall was not sudden. It unfolded quietly, one loss at a time. Within a month, Jason's shop shut its doors for good. The tools he once handled with pride were sold to cover late payments. The truck was repossessed. Friends stopped dropping by, not out of cruelty, but discomfort. Misfortune has a way of making people avert their eyes. Brianna left soon after. She packed quickly, efficiently, as if erasing a mistake. "I didn't sign up for this," she said without anger, without warmth. "I need a life." Jason listened from the edge of the bed, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He did not beg. He did not argue. He had no leverage left. When the door closed behind her, the house felt larger and emptier. Jason learned the shape of darkness. He learned the distance between the bed and the bathroom by counting steps. He learned to listen for echoes to avoid walls. He learned the sharp humiliation of burning his hand on a stove he could no longer see. But worse than the bruises and burns was the silence. Silence gives you time to remember. He remembered the laughter, the beer, the words. Drink from the toilet. Mom. Some nights, the memory woke him, gasping, his chest tight with regret that felt heavier than any physical pain. Maria stayed long enough to ensure he was stable. She arranged a white cane. She helped him learn basic routines. She spoke to social workers and charities, but when he asked her to stay longer, she shook her head gently. "I've already given you my life," she said. "Now you have to learn to live yours." A week later, she left to live with her niece near the coast. For the first time in decades, Maria woke to the sound of waves instead of demands. She volunteered at a small church kitchen, serving meals to people who looked just like the man she had once invited in for water. When they thanked her, she smiled, not because she needed the gratitude, but because she recognized the pain behind their eyes. Jason's descent continued. Without income, he lost the house. He moved into a rented room barely larger than a closet. Each morning, a neighbor guided him to a corner near a busy street and left him there with a small cup. "Spare change," Jason would say quietly. "God bless you." The first days were unbearable. He heard people whisper, laugh, judge. Some recognized his voice. "Weren't you the guy with the auto shop?" they asked. Jason nodded, shame burning his cheeks. "Yes," he replied, "I was." But slowly, something changed. Jason stopped asking only for money. He began telling the truth. "I treated my mother like nothing," he said to those who lingered. "I humiliated her when she was thirsty, and I lost everything because of it." Some scoffed and walked away. Others stayed. One afternoon, a young man sat beside him on the curb and cried. "I yelled at my mom this morning," he said. "She's sick. I didn't think it mattered." Jason placed a trembling hand on the man's shoulder. "Go home," he said, "before it's too late." Those moments became his sustenance. Not the coins, but the repentance he witnessed. 6 months passed. Jason learned to give more than he received. When he earned enough, he shared food with others on the street. When he heard someone crying nearby, he listened. He prayed every night, not for his sight to return, but for the chance to become someone different. One December afternoon, he heard familiar footsteps. "Jason," a voice said gently. He froze. "Mom?" Maria knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. They were warmer now, stronger. "I came to see how you're doing," she said. Tears streamed down Jason's face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "I forgave you a long time ago," Maria replied. Forgiveness was never the hardest part. She pressed something into his hand, money, folded carefully. "For food," she said. "And rent. Not forever. Just enough." "Will you stay?" he asked, hopeful. Maria shook her head. "No." She smiled softly. "But I see who you're becoming." Before leaving, she leaned close. "Tell your story," she said. "Let your darkness be light for someone else." 3 years later, Jason stood before a small congregation. He held a Bible in Braille, his voice steady. "My name is Jason Hernandez," he said. "I was blind before I lost my sight, and God used darkness to save me from myself." People wept. After the service, a pastor approached him. "Would you share this testimony elsewhere?" he asked. "People need to hear it." Jason nodded. For the first time, he understood purpose. Far away, Maria walked along the shoreline at sunset. The wind lifted her hair. Peace rested on her shoulders like a gentle mantle. She stopped suddenly. A man stood on the rocks ahead, simple clothes, familiar eyes. "You did well," he said. Tears filled her eyes. "Is my son?" "He sees now," the man replied, "more clearly than ever." Maria smiled. And as the waves rolled in, she understood at last. Justice had not ended the story. It had redeemed it. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to Heaven Walks With Us. Leave Amen in the comments if you believe mercy and justice can walk together. And if you need prayer tonight, write pray. We read every single one.